Jacob's hands shook as he pulled back the blanket. Aiyana had refused to let him see, but he needed to know, needed to understand what she had done. The stumps ended just below her knees, wrapped in clean white bandages. She had lost her legs, both of them. Because for 3 days during the worst blizzard in Wyoming history, she had wrapped her body around his, keeping him warm, giving him her heat, letting the cold take her instead. "Why?" Jacob whispered, tears streaming. "Why would you do this?" Aiyana looked at him with calm, dark eyes. "Because you were dying, and I could not let that happen." But this story didn't begin with that moment. It began 2 months earlier, when Jacob first saw Aiyana. The small Wyoming town of Rock Springs was a harsh place. Winter was merciless, and the people even more so. Jacob ran a ranch here, small, modest, but enough for him. He was 35 years old, had never married, had lost his family. Life had taught him to be alone. At the edge of town, every week an Apache woman would come to sell medicinal herbs. People called her the Giant. She was nearly 6 feet tall, muscular, intimidating. But Jacob had seen something else in her eyes. Kindness. Gentleness. He had watched how she carefully treated injured animals. One day when Jacob's horse broke its leg, Aiyana approached him. She didn't speak, just knelt down and examined the horse's leg. Her hands were skilled, her movements precise. She calmed the animal, bandaged the leg, and gave Jacob a salve made from plants. "Thank you," Jacob said in surprise. Aiyana bowed her head slightly. "Animals should not suffer," she said in accented but clear English. "What's your name?" "Aiyana. It means eternal blossom. I'm Jacob." The woman smiled, small but real, and from that moment, Jacob began looking for her every week. Weeks passed. Jacob and Aiyana slowly became friends. They spoke little but formed a deep connection. He taught her about Wyoming land. She taught him Apache healing methods. Sometimes in the evenings they would sit together, watching the sunset. One day, Aiyana asked, "Why are you alone?" Jacob hesitated. "I lost my family. Disease took them. Since then, I haven't wanted to attach myself to anyone." "Terrible. What about you? Why are you alone?" Aiyana's face darkened. "My tribe cast me out. I cannot bear children. That is the most important duty of an Apache woman. I could not, so I no longer belong to the tribe." Jacob's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Now I am free. I choose my own path." And that night, Jacob began to see Aiyana differently, not just as a strong woman, but as a beautiful soul. Then that day came. It was mid-November. Jacob went to check on his animals in the northern hills. The weather was cold, but didn't look bad. But in the west, weather could change in an hour. And it did. The blizzard came without warning. One minute the sky was clear, the next a white wall covered everything. The wind was so powerful Jacob couldn't control his horse. The horse panicked, reared. Jacob fell. He hit his head on a rock. Blood flowed, dizziness, cold, pain. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. Snow continued falling, deeper with each passing minute. Jacob tried to crawl, but where? Every direction was white. His fingers started going numb, then his toes, then his face. Hypothermia was beginning. Jacob knew it. He was dying. He closed his eyes. Maybe resting was good. Maybe he could just sleep. Then a hand grabbed him, strong, warm, determined. Jacob opened his eyes. Aiyana was there in the middle of the snowstorm, her hair flying in the wind. She didn't speak. She just lifted him with this giant woman's strength and began dragging. Jacob didn't know where she was going. Everything was blurry. He only felt her warmth, her strength, and then darkness. Jacob woke 3 days later. Fire, shelter, life. It took minutes to realize he was alive. His head hurt, his body was weak, but he was alive. He looked around. They were in a small cave. Aiyana sat by the fire, her face pale and sweaty. Her hands were wrapping something. "Aiyana?" Jacob said weakly. The woman turned to him. She smiled, but her eyes held pain. "You're awake. Good. What happened?" "Blizzard. I found you. Brought you here." "How many days?" "3 days." Jacob tried to sit up. "3 days? God, I have to get back to the ranch." "No." Aiyana's voice was firm. "Storm's still going. You cannot go." Jacob stopped. He looked carefully at Aiyana. The woman's face was paler than normal. Her breathing was shallow. And her hands were trembling. "Are you okay?" Aiyana turned her face away. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Jacob saw. The woman's legs were hidden under a blanket. But something was wrong. They weren't moving. Not moving at all. "Aiyana," Jacob said slowly, "I need to see your legs." "No. Please." A long silence. Then Aiyana bowed her head. "Okay. But be ready." And Jacob pulled back the blanket. At first he didn't understand. Then he saw. Aiyana's legs, below the ankles, were black. Frostbite. Gangrene. The tissue was dead. Jacob's stomach turned. God, no. 3 days, Aiyana said quietly. "I used my body to keep you warm. I gave you my heat. But my feet, they stayed in the cold. Too long." Jacob stared at her in horror. You did this for me?" "Yes." "Why? Why would you sacrifice yourself?" Aiyana looked at him with those calm, dark eyes. "Because you are a good man, Jacob, and the world needs good men. Much more than it needs my legs." Jacob's eyes filled with tears. No, this isn't fair. It's not fair," Aiyana said gently. "But it was right." The storm stopped a day later. When Jacob and Aiyana returned to town, Aiyana could no longer walk. Jacob carried her on his back, the entire way, for hours. The doctor told Jacob the truth. "Her legs must be amputated. Gangrene is spreading. If we don't, she'll die." "How much?" "Both below the knee." Jacob put his head in his hands. God. The surgery was performed the next day. Jacob waited outside for hours. Finally, the doctor came out, tired but relieved. "She'll survive, but she'll never walk again, at least not without legs." Jacob went inside. Aiyana lay in bed, sleeping. Her face was pale but calm, and her legs were gone. Jacob sat beside her and cried. For the first time in years, he cried. This woman, this strong, beautiful woman, had sacrificed everything to save him. Aiyana woke a week later. Jacob was there, never having left her side. "Hello," Aiyana said weakly. "Hello," Jacob said, his voice hoarse. "I'm still alive." "Yes, and so am I." Aiyana smiled. "Then we succeeded." Jacob held her hand. "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I will never leave you. Never. No matter what. I'll stay with you. I'll take care of you. Because you gave me my life. And I will give you the rest of mine." Aiyana's eyes filled with tears. "Jacob." "No. Don't argue. This is my choice. You made your choice in that cave. Now I'm making mine." Months passed. Jacob cared for Aiyana devotedly. He washed her, dressed her, fed her. He built her a wooden wheelchair. He took her everywhere. Town people wondered, some gossiped. But Jacob didn't care. Aiyana began to grow stronger. Her arms became even more powerful. She learned to move herself in the wheelchair. Jacob made her crutches, special ones with Apache-style carvings. Using crutches, Aiyana could stand, could walk short distances. One evening, watching the sunset, Aiyana asked, "Do you regret it?" "Why?" "Because of me. Your life changed. Now you're living with a cripple." Jacob turned to her angry. "Never use that word. You're not a cripple. You're alive. And so am I. That's all that matters." But I can't live a normal life anymore. Who wants normal? Jacob smiled. I want you, with or without legs. Aiyana cried. For the first time since being with Jacob, she cried. And Jacob took her in his arms, held her tight. A year later, Jacob and Aiyana were married. A small ceremony, just a few friends. Aiyana sat in her wheelchair, but her smile was like sunshine. The preacher asked, Jacob, do you take this woman as your wife, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer? Jacob looked at Aiyana. Yes, despite everything, yes. Aiyana, do you take this man as your husband? Aiyana smiled. Yes, because he gave his life for mine, and I will share my life with him. Years passed. Jacob and Aiyana lived happily. There were obstacles, physical, emotional. Sometimes Aiyana fell into depression, thinking about what she'd lost. Jacob was always there, reminding her of the truth. You didn't lose. You just changed. And I love you in every form. Aiyana continued working. She grew medicinal plants, taught people. She traveled around town in her wheelchair, talked to people, helped. Over time, people stopped seeing her as just the woman without legs. They saw her as Aiyana, strong, wise, kind. When Jacob grew old, when his hair turned white and his back bent, he still helped Aiyana every morning. He lifted her from bed, placed her in her wheelchair, made her coffee, and every morning he told her, I love you. And every morning Aiyana answered, I love you too. I always will. Aiyana died before Jacob, heart failure, peacefully in her sleep. Jacob held her until her last breath. At her funeral, Jacob spoke. His voice trembled but was determined. This woman sacrificed her life for me. She lost her legs so I could live. And every day after, she taught me the value of life. She taught me to love even after suffering, to give even after losing. People called her crippled, but she was more whole than I was, because she knew what true sacrifice was, and she taught me. Jacob died a year later. His grave was placed next to Aiyana's. On the headstones it read, Aiyana, eternal blossom, lost her legs but never her spirit. Jacob, faithful husband, she saved him, he saved her life. In the blizzard, Aiyana saved Jacob. She kept him warm, sacrificed her own legs, and Jacob dedicated the rest to her. Because true love is sacrifice. True love is stronger than obstacles. True love never gives up. If this story moved you, if Aiyana and Jacob's sacrifice inspired you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Because more stories are coming from the Wild West. Stories of sacrifice, love, and never giving up. And who knows, maybe the next story will be yours.